Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Albany City Council special meeting for September 25th, 2018. Please join Councilmember Barnes in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Barnes?
Here.
Councilmember Moss?
Here.
Councilmember Pilch?
Here.
Vice Mayor Nason?
Here.
Mayor McQuaid?
Here. This is an opportunity for the public to speak on the following items. Public report on partial settlement in litigation against the City of Albany by the Albany Lions Club. It is a staff recommendation that the council report out regarding the partial settlement in the litigation against the City of Albany by the Albany Lions Club. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, with us this evening is appellate attorney Andrew Dewey, as well as his partner, Bridget Clark. We have asked Andrew to speak to the matters of the litigation as well as next steps.
Good evening. I represent, as my partner does, Councilmember Rochelle Nason. I don't represent the city, although I have made constitutional arguments on behalf of both Councilmember Vice Mayor Nason as well as the city. The settlement, which you'll hear more about, has two aspects. One is to settle essentially civil rights claims against the city, and I don't have much involvement in that. My role is mostly in an appellate sense, and I will be handling primarily the Ninth Circuit appeal over the constitutional issues and the substantive California property law issues about the easement that maintains that cross on city land. I just want to explain a couple things. So the partial settlement, as again you'll hear more about, resolves the claims against the city for claims that they wrongfully interfered with religious expression and other property rights that the Lions Club claims. So those are resolved with this settlement. What remains unresolved is the validity and the enforceability of the easement that has been on record since 1973 that keeps the cross there. I want to just explain that if this were a case where the city had its own cross on its own land, and it just said that we're doing this for religious purposes, this would probably not be a difficult case. What complicates this case is again, the easement held by a private party, the Lions Club. And to my knowledge, there's no precedent where an easement protects a religious display that's situated on public land. So we do have a novel issue here, and the Ninth Circuit will have much to think about. Our position, which the Lions Club opposes, is that the easement is unenforceable because any easement must comply with the laws that are applicable to the land on which the easement burdens. And I should just take a step back and explain. Easement is a non-possessory property right. So you might have an easement from PG&E to have a storm drain go through your property, or maybe there's a road that can go through your property. The easement holder doesn't own any strip of land there, but they do own a certain right, a non-possessory right, to do something on your land. So this easement purportedly allows the Lions Club to maintain this cross and have access to this cross to maintain it. And the question again is this easement legally enforceable? And that's where our dispute is. So at the Ninth Circuit, we will contend that much like an easement that purports to allow you to do something that zoning laws, for instance, don't allow, that an easement that purports to allow something that the Establishment Clause of the U.S. Constitution doesn't allow, cannot be done. So you might have words on paper, but you can't do it, is essentially our position. So that's the essence of the argument. And again, I'll leave it to others to explain the settlement of the civil rights claims against the city. But that's the essence of what we're going to do on appeal. And I'll leave it to others to decide if I'm to take questions or if I'm to wait, whatever you prefer?
Well, if any of the council members have questions, this would be a good time to pose them.
Any questions? Questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, how about a timeline? Can you,
Oh, yes. So I expect that we'll have on file very shortly, maybe within the next, maybe tomorrow even, a judgment and then a notice of appeal within perhaps a week. The Ninth Circuit, however, that's the federal appellate court where we are, is not known for its speed in handling decisions. So I can't tell you how soon this will be resolved. We hope it will be resolved very quickly. I can tell you that we intend to file a motion to expedite the proceedings, but I think everyone should understand that this is a slow process and that we would be lucky if 1 year from now we had a decision from the Ninth Circuit. I think more likely is 1.5 years or even 2 years, unfortunately. But that is the appellate process, and we'll do our best on the city council side to get that going as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you. We may have you back up after public comment. The City of Albany and the Albany Lions Club have reached a partial settlement agreement which includes these main items. 1, the Lions Club will dismiss with prejudice all causes of action asserted in their complaint, including all claims for recovery of monetary damages, attorney's fees, and court costs. 2, the city will pay a sum of $125,000 to the Lions Club, which sum covers all monetary damages, attorney's fees, and court costs asserted by the Lions Club in their complaint and described in paragraph 1 above. Although not specified in the settlement agreement, $100,000 of this amount will be paid by the city's insurance provider. Settlement resolves all disputed legal claims asserted in the Lions Club complaint, but does not constitute an admission of liability by any party. The parties will jointly request that Judge Alsup enter a final judgment on the issues presented by the city's counterclaim, a necessary prerequisite for appeal. The parties retain their rights to appeal to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals with respect to all issues presented by the counterclaim. However, neither party will seek recovery of monetary damages, attorney's fees, or court costs regarding to the appeal from the other party. The City of Albany wants to make it very clear that no evidence exists to support, and the city continues to firmly deny the false allegation of the Albany Lions Club that our fire chief and the rest of the city defendants acted with animus toward Christianity. The fire chief and other city officials were in fact deeply concerned that the electrical system to the cross posed a fire hazard to the neighborhood and the hill itself. The East Bay Atheists performed a valuable public service by pointing out the danger. We find it troubling in the current fire environment that a city could face potential liability for addressing a fire hazard solely because the danger happens to be posed by a religious symbol. The mayor and vice mayor plan to write a letter to our representatives in the California legislature and in Congress, pointing out the undesirable public policy effects of this aspect of the case, and urge that greater protections be adopted for cities and officials that, like the City of Albany, are working in good faith to protect their community from fire hazards. The city settled this aspect of the case solely because it was able to do so for a monetary amount that is likely much smaller than the expense of a burdensome trial and avert any risk of irrational jury award. The court's decision on the summary judgment motions was particularly critical of the City of Albany for failing to heed the warnings of the California Court of Appeals in 1983 and of Justice Stanley Moss' separate opinion in the California Supreme Court decision of 1985 to the effect that the presence of the cross in the public park was incompatible with the United States Constitution. The City of Albany continues to pursue removal of the cross through the judicial process. The action of the Lions Club have so far cost the City of Albany in excess of $200,000, exclusive of the $100,000 contribution to the settlement by the city's risk management pool. This sum is less than might have been spent had not a law firm undertaken to represent one council member, pro bono publico, and provided substantial assistance to the city's legal team. The value of the donated legal services of appellate lawyers Bridget Clark and Andrew Dewey far exceeds the settlement amount in this case. We are extremely disappointed in the Albany Lions Club for their continued insistence that a religious symbol be prominently displayed in a public space, despite the numerous requests for its removal by members of the Albany community speaking out regardless of their personal religious preferences. Are there any other comments by council members?
I just want to clarify, we have till 6 p.m., is that correct?
That is correct.
And are there any more public comments?
We will open it up to the public after council.
We'll have, if there's time at the end, I'll make a few comments then.
I'll do the same. I want to be sure that the public has a chance to comment.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Okay. Okay, great. Before I open it up to the public, I do have a letter I'd like to read into the public record. Reverend Julie Wakely Lynch is not here. She's on vacation and did send a letter I'd like to read. I write in support of the council in appealing the ruling regarding the Albany Lions Club action against the city of Albany. I have addressed council before on this matter and will just confirm here what I have expressed in the past. In a pluralistic society with strong separations between church and state, it is not appropriate for the primary symbol of one religious community to be placed visibly on public land to the exclusion of others. I write this as a leader of a Christian congregation that is very clear in its religious identity as followers of Jesus. We have a very large cross on the exterior of our church. Our buildings are also home to a Jewish community, and we advocate for the fair and respectful treatment of persons of all or no religious beliefs. The United States has always been a country of religious diversity, and I recognize and honor that the cross in question has deep meaning to those who support its presence. However, for a greater number, this religious symbol on public land is at best unwelcome. Please continue in your work to make sure all in Albany feel welcome and safe. I would also encourage at an appropriate time some skillfully moderated listening sessions for healing in the community for all parties involved. Sincerely, Julie Wakely Lynch, Rector, St. Albans Episcopal Church. Do you have
Yes.
speaker cards?
Larry Hickok, Roy Torkington, and Brian Martin.
Hi, my name is Larry Hickok. I'm the coordinator of East Bay Atheists. There's really very little I could say. I'm really quite moved by the mayor's statement. It was very well done and really quite profound. However, I do think it's necessary to point out that this partial settlement forced on the city is a very clear indicator that as long as that cross is even near city park property, the city will be unable to properly manage their parkland for fear of being bullied by yet another frivolous lawsuit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to compliment Mayor McQuaid on her statement. In some cases, you took the words out of my mouth, so now I don't know what to say. But I have been in the position of litigation where it cost less to settle than it would have cost to continue litigation, even if I had won. And I understand the cost analysis that goes on there, but you still grind your teeth afterwards when you think about it. And when I first began to read this settlement, I thought it was an outrageous surrender to gross extortion. I was outraged, but there are some good things in it. And I mean, it's my understanding that the appeals will go on. The appeal can go on, and there will be the loser will not have to pay the winner's legal fees, if I understand what I read. And so that's a good thing. It means you can go all the way to the Supreme Court without paying the Lions fees. And so I would say that instead of it being an outrageous surrender to gross extortion, it's a strategic surrender to run-of-the-mill extortion. And one thing that it shows, I mean, the Lions Club claims to be a service organization, and indeed they are. And in this case, they've serviced the city of Albany the way a bull services a heifer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brian Martin, Albany resident with East Bay Atheists and Albany Hill Park for All. I helped bring these issues to the city's and public's attention back in 2015 and 2016. And since then, I do thank the mayor and the Reverend for their statements. and the City Council for giving the issue of the cross on public land the attention it deserves and for following through with promises to remedy the situation as quickly and fiscally responsible as possible. As pragmatic and practical as this settlement is, I think it should disturb all of us to see a service organization going after the city it serves and require hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash for a loss of electricity that they readily admit was during a time of year the cross had never before been lit. See minute 56 of the May 24th federal courtroom video where longtime Lion and current Lion lawyer Bob Nichols himself tells the judge the cross has never before been lit during that time in the fall. And just 2 weeks ago, the cross was lit from our public park during Rosh Hashanah on September 11th, telling people far and wide our city only honors Christians on that day. This is a pressing problem happening months after Judge Alsop ruled the cross in our public plan is an illegal violation of the Constitution and needs to be remedied. Needs to be removed. A true civic-minded organization that follows its own bylaws, which say it's not even supposed to debate sectarian religion, let alone force it on people from public land, would do the right thing and remove the cross on its own. If the Lions are to accept the $125,000 from the settlement, I call on them to use it in the community, starting with the removal of the cross, 100% of it. I got this t-shirt from participating in the Albany Triathlon last year. Lions clubs all over the world do great work in their communities. Ours has supported a number of things in town, like the triathlon. I tell people the Lions here in Albany have done a lot of great things, but the cross in our public park is not one of them, and now we have this monetary settlement. Unfortunately, their logo is on the shirt and is forever tainted by their misguided, unconstitutional forcing of one religion on our community from public land. So today, I cut it out, as I hope the Albany residents will cut the Lions out of consideration from the community until this is fully resolved. Thank you.
Thank you. Who are the next speakers? That's it? If you wish to speak, come on up and turn in your card.
My name is Ellen Davis Zapata. I've lived in Albany since 1966, and I mention that because at the time, well, I'm not sure. I wasn't aware that there was a cross, whether it was there or not at the time. But as time went on, I and my friends started to notice it and wondered, what the heck? What is this doing in this town? And over years, we thought about asking for its removal, but you know, in those days, it's kind of like women didn't have rights to address abuses, and kids didn't, and we didn't think that you know, the subject was you know, approachable. But over the years, we've always thought that it really should be gone, and I think lately even more so. And I like to think that a cross is not a bad thing, but in our town, or representing a city, it's the wrong thing. And that I encourage the council to do whatever you need to do to get it removed. And I think it would be better for us, for our image, and for the citizens of Albany to know that we are an inclusive community, that everyone belongs here, not just Christians. And if it matters, I do go to church once in a while, but I certainly, like Reverend Wakely, believe that it is not appropriate for Albany. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Come on up.
Hi, I'm Tree Gelb-Stuber. I've lived in Albany since 1994. I think that the cross on Albany Hill is totally inappropriate, and I hope that with the money that the Lions Club receives in the litigation, it's used for the purposes of something that's in their mission statement, to empower employees to serve their communities, meet humanitarian needs, encourage peace, and promote international understanding through Lions Clubs. I'd also like to encourage them to read their bylaws, which says that one of the purposes is to provide a forum for the open discussion of all matters of public interest, and that partisan politics and sectarian religion shall not be debated by club members. So this cross is totally out of line with their own organization, and there are no other Lions clubs that do anything like this that I am aware of, and if it happens, I'm sure that this is not part of what they're intending to do, so please remove it.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for final comments.
I do have a statement. The reasons for the partial settlement are clear. The City of Albany is paying $25,000 rather than defend itself from the Albany Lions Club in a jury trial that would cost it far more than that amount. We would have liked to have a chance to prove the falsity of the charge that our fire chief and other accused officials violated the civil rights of the Albany Lions Club. We would like to demonstrate that, in fact, the city acted to protect Albany Hill from the wildfire risk posed by a worn electrical line attached to a eucalyptus tree. But such vindication would be of no financial benefit to Albany. In addition, the partial settlement will allow appeals by the parties to go forward. So, given the participation of the city's risk management pool, it is essentially an offer this council could not responsibly refuse. With regard to the appeals process and the future removal of the cross from Albany's municipal park, I would like to thank the many supportive members of Albany's Christian community, and I want to touch on any lingering concerns that removal of the cross will somehow be a loss to religious life here. I would also like to address the concerns of those among us for whom the cross in the public park has a sentimental rather than a religious value. To anyone who fears that the removal of the cross from the park will somehow be a loss to Christianity, I would urge you to consider the benefits to faith communities of the separation of church and state. The United States has a far more robust religious life than European countries with established religions. Many believe this is because religion here is exclusively in the hands of religious congregations and institutions rather than in the hands of the government. Christianity is more likely to benefit than to suffer any loss from the city's withdrawal of its traditional endorsement of the faith through the cross in the park. To anyone who sees the cross as a symbol of old Albany rather than a religious symbol, I would urge you to keep in mind that as sentimental as so many of us are about the way Albany once was, it had a shadow side as well, one that included both racial and religious discrimination. Making the Albany Hill Park a place for all to enjoy on an equal basis must outweigh any sentimental attachment we may have to the city's past. Finally, to my friends in the Albany Lions Club, I want to say, please do the right thing. Live up to the ideals of the Lions Club International and give all of this money to local charities. My own lawyers, Mr. Dewey and Ms. Clark, have donated all their time on this case for the public good, with a value in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I hope you will prevail upon your lawyer to donate his time as well. Donations of this kind will allow some good to emerge from this very unfortunate situation.
Councilmember Pilch, do you have a comment?
I want to thank the mayor and the vice mayor for their statements. I want to thank the attorneys for being here and for the attorneys' comments. I want to thank the city staff and city attorney for having worked on this and, as was expressed, having spent so much time and effort and money on this. And I guess I echo the comments of others who hope that the Lions Club does put this money to good use, such as with the removal of the cross from our public land. And I would personally respectfully ask you that if this is the way that you serve us, please do not serve us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of to-the-point statements tonight, so I'm going to keep it very short. Yes, I was also disappointed that we needed to settle this part of the suit. But as has been stated, the economics of a small city pretty much forced that issue. I'm also disappointed and puzzled by the Lions Club action in all of this. I came from a family where my father was in the Lions Club, and I had a very different perception of what they did and the kind of service they gave the community. I think a lot of the reputation here in Albany and services that they have given us have been tarnished by this whole incident. I am very hopeful, though, that in the end, as we take this on to the Ninth Circuit, that justice will be served.
There. All right, as I often do, I'm going to start with a little story. The weather's good these days, isn't it? It's fall again. It's fire season. The weather reminds me of those days in 1991 when the Oakland Hills fire came roaring down out of the hills and was stopped, according to some of our firefighters, only because the wind changed and the cemeteries created a natural fire break. And had those events not occurred, that fire would have roared all the way to the bay. So we're not talking about hypotheticals here. Obviously, these kind of fires happen. I'm also remembering October 8th, 2017, about a year ago. That was the day of the annual Mount Diablo Challenge bicycle hill climb, and I was riding my bike up Mount Diablo that morning at about 9 o'clock. And when you got to about halfway up the mountain, there was all of a sudden this blast of brutal wind. Oddly enough, it usually comes off of the ocean, northwest, but this was coming off the land. And it was pretty fierce by the time I got to the top, and that was what is called Diablo wind. It's our version of the Santa Ana winds. And for some reason, oddly enough, I checked the weather station on Mount Diablo that night. Even on Diablo, those winds were 50 to 60 miles an hour and peaking at 70 miles an hour. They were worse further north, where I often bike in Sonoma County, and that was the night the fire started in Sonoma County. And I remember getting up Monday morning to do the Blue Glove Crew pickup, litter pickup on Solano and San Pablo, and there was obviously a major fire somewhere. But what I didn't know is that fire had roared out of the hills above Santa Rosa, had destroyed in the hills the homes of 2 bike riders who I was close to, had come down at the Luther Burbank Center, which is a big community center where I volunteered many times at the end of the wine country century, jumped the freeway, burned down the Santa Rosa Cycling Club warehouse at the end of a street called Coffee Lane, which is right next door to the neighborhood known as Coffee Park, where yet another one of my bike buddies lived, who described the destruction of his neighborhood as it being completely incinerated. And I had seen pictures of this, and I can tell you I saw this myself. That fire, which my friend described as a horizontal blast furnace moving at running speed across the landscape, was so hot that you would see cars parked in their driveways burned, but hunkered down on their axle in a funny way. Then you'd look at them and you'd realize the fire was hot enough that it melted the alloy wheels There's little shiny puddles of aluminum in the driveway. And that was what was left of the alloy wheels. The fire was hot enough to melt aluminum. And, you know, we got lucky because part of the problems that caused that fire, as I'm sure you've read about in the last several weeks, is PG&E wiring that was not up to snuff and that was too close to trees, and PG&E's in hot water for, you know, triggering those fires. Here in Albany, we dodged a bullet because on Albany Hill, the night of October the 8th, when the winds were very strong here too, there could have been, you know, a bare wire strung through a tree, and when the winds blew, that wire could have caused sparks that lit up the eucalyptus litter on the ground and the eucalyptus trees, blowing all sorts of hot embers down onto the condos, which the smaller condos to the north are wood frame construction like Coffey Park was, like a lot of the Oakland Hills were. But that didn't happen, did it? And part of the reason why was because a year before those fires on October 8th, 2017, we had a fire chief, went up to those wires and that cross, saw that it was an obvious fire danger, and had PG&E disconnect the current to that cross, and that was passing through that wire that was embedded in a tree, and then had PG&E eventually repaired those wires. And by the time Santa Rosa lost 10% of its housing stock in that fire, PG&E had upgraded the wiring on Albany Hill so that it cleared all the trees and makes a straight shot down to the wires down below, and greatly reducing any fire risk. And had the Lions had their way, that action on the fire chief's part would not have occurred. And it's conceivable something like the fires we saw in Santa Rosa or in Oakland in 1991 would have happened in Albany. Now, in the Lions Club, interestingly enough, are one of the main beneficiaries of our fire chief's professionalism and his actions. Because had it been the case that the Lions Club had successfully prevented our fire chief forcing PG&E to upgrade those wires, and there had been a bad fire, Mr. Nichols there would be very busy defending lots and lots of lawsuits against the Lions Club. So, and what was our fire chief's, well, I'll just say, the old saying, no good deed goes unpunished. So then the Lions Club turns around and sues the fire chief and sues the city of Albany for basically, preventing their funky old infrastructure from potentially causing a catastrophic fire. Life is full of ironies, isn't it? Especially when you deal with unscrupulous people. So let me see if I have anything else to say here. I'll just say that my feelings now are positive, and I want to leave everyone in this room with a positive thought that things worked out for us. They didn't work out for Santa Rosa or parts of Napa County or Lake County or many other places that have had devastating fires in, last year or two or three. But little old Albany was spared that fate because things worked here. We had concerned citizens who, for whatever reason, were up on the hill looking at the cross going, boy, that wiring looks pretty inadequate. And we had a professional fire chief who finally went up there during a terrible drought season when the fire hazard was very high in the fall of 2006, took one look at that and said, first he went up there twice. First he went up there and said, somebody needs to take that down. And when that didn't happen, he ordered it taken down, which he has the authority to do. I don't think it has anything to do with his devotion as a Christian or as a religious person. I think he was acting purely as a fire professional who saw a public health risk and chose to do his job and to do his duty and remove the risk, which he did successfully. So for Albany, things worked. I think that's a positive thing. You know, we have a town where people care, and oftentimes because of that, you know, luck seems to smile on us. So that's the positive thought that I would like to leave you with for now. Now, I'll just say, however, one more thing. As the son of a U.S. Army chaplain who did many, many years of serious pew time as a child, I will have lots of things to say about, you know, the religious aspects of this case when that's appropriate. But that, as our attorney indicated, maybe 2 years from now. So today I just wanted to address the issue that was resolved today, which is about the fire risk. So whenever you drive by Albany Hill and you see that the condos didn't burn down, be thankful and remember it's due to the professionalism of our fire chief.
Well, I just want to conclude by saying thank you to all of you who are here this evening, and thank you for your support over this. It's been a couple of years now, and we'll continue on, and we appreciate all of your support. And I especially want to thank Bridget Clark and Andrew Dewey. You have made a huge difference in this, and all of Albany is very, very grateful to you. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all for coming.